So after a year of waiting, Red Dead Redemption 2 is here. But if you read commentary online, you'll see many players are not having a great time with it so far. Some people are experiencing game crashes, others cannot even launch the game due to obtuse reasons, and others are experiencing bad performance. Heck, I even laughed out loud after clicking the shortcut on my desktop and it gave me this error. But one of the biggest complaints I have heard so far is concerning the word optimization, and how apparently poor optimization is in Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC. Hopping into the game directly after launch, I had a level-headed understanding of what performance I could expect thanks to Nvidia putting out a very small settings recommendation, but wow, this game's ultra settings sure are heavy. I'm a reasonable person though, so I thought to myself, this all has to make sense. How is it that an Xbox One X can run Red Dead Redemption 2 at an okay but not completely stable 30 FPS at 4K? Well, after taking the time to look into it, it actually does make a lot of sense how that is possible. In this video concerning Red Dead Redemption 2's PC version, I'm going to do something different than usual. Instead of cranking the game up to Ultra and saying what some easy wins are from the top down, I'm going to start at the bottom, going to the Xbox One X version and its PC equivalent settings to explain what you can gain in looks from that version, but also what you lose in performance over it. For this video, I'm going to consider Xbox One X's equivalent settings to be my optimized settings. As I said last year in my speculation video concerning this port, I think the game already looks pretty great on Xbox One X, and I stick by that. And given its performance profile, it must be doing something right. So here, I will go through the entire list of settings in Red Dead Redemption 2, with asides in those moments to the advanced settings menu where they are applicable, and I'll also discuss the performance implications for those settings where it really matters the most. Yep, we're going to go through every single setting here to figure out what Xbox One X is doing. And believe me, it really paints an intriguing picture in the end. To derive these settings, I played through the first chapter of the game at the highest settings that reasonably allowed an okay cap of 30 FPS using the game's half refresh rate VSync. A half refresh rate VSync, which by the way is imperfect, and I saw frame pacing issues when using it. This was all done on an Asus ROG Strix RTX 2080 Ti, Ryzen 3900X, and 16GB of DDR4 at 3200 MHz, all on an NVMe SSD. So let's do this all in order as the menu presents them, starting first with the texture quality setting. Here, Xbox One X looks to be utilizing the Ultra quality setting, with no discernible difference between the PC Ultra and Xbox One X in any shot I could find. In comparison though, dropping texture resolution in this game has a profoundly negative effect, with even high not looking too great to my eye. Going down to medium and low generally mangle the image, while saving only about 1GB in VRAM in total over Ultra at low, where Ultra was using 7.5GB of VRAM. While the Xbox One X manages Ultra in this preset, it makes sacrifices in utilizing only 4 times anisotropic filtering, which is most obvious in long shots with unadorned textures stretching out into the distance, like here. With 8 or 16 times AF, you can see how the textures adjacent to the river here in this shot become progressively more detailed, while Xbox One X leaves them rather blurry. This is a common theme on Xbox One X actually, as we'll see later in the video. Detail in the foreground is heightened at the cost of detail in the distance. Here I found little to no performance difference between the settings on this GPU, but to keep things simple, let's just say 4X is optimized for now. Lighting quality is where we start to see one of the biggest differences in terms of visuals. This setting does 2 things. First, it changes the light fall off to be more realistic, giving a kind of ambient secondary bounce to many light sources in indoor areas. Going down to high, this fall off is lessened, and going to medium, it is completely killed with no visible difference on low. In outdoor scenes, Ultra also adds in global light, which can mean light from the sun or moon where it is not visible on other settings. Here in this scene, going from Ultra to medium calls out the moon lighting, which was presumably removed at medium and lower for performance reasons. As can be seen in indoor scenes, Xbox One X does not have that extended fall-off distance for indoor lights. And in outdoor scenes, it does not have this global lighting either, which makes it the medium or low setting here. In terms of performance, this will be different depending upon the light and the scene, but going from medium to ultra here saw a 14% performance drop. Global illumination affects the quality and accuracy of bounce lighting in the game, making it more representative of local conditions. This is a hard one to peg down on Xbox One X, but as we can see in this scene here, lowering global illumination quality from ultra to low gradually decreases the orange tint of bounce light, as seen on these rocks here, basically to the point where low is just an ambient gray sky color. Looking at Xbox One X in that same scene, we can see that the ambient color on the rocks is decidedly more gray than orange. But this is unexact and I cannot say conclusively. But this is one of the few areas in the game where time of day does not change, so I will say that Xbox One X is around low or medium settings here. In terms of performance, there's not really any big difference in the real world game, but by benchmarking and averaging over time, I found that going up to Ultra will cost 2% of your performance over medium. Shadow quality took quite a bit of investigation to get, as it is made up of multiple interacting settings. From the opening scenes of the game, I knew it was not Ultra quality, as the resolution of indoor shadows gave that away, with Ultra looking much crisper than the Xbox One X. But it wasn't just indoor scenes. Outdoor shadows in the distance look quite a lot better on Ultra, as you can see when looking through the binoculars here. Likewise, on the Ultra settings, screen space shadows can be cast from more than one light source at a time, which can greatly enhance the quality of many scenes. Like here, you can see extra shadows cast from the torchlight that are not on Xbox One X. Or here, outside the train, where two lights adjacent to the door cast screen space shadows, making it so that all these rivets get two shadows cast from them. Xbox One X, on the other hand, is missing all of that detail. So, not Ultra, but high and medium and indoor scenes looked very similar to Xbox One X. It only became obvious which of these two settings that the Xbox One X had when I reached the camp in the game, where medium looked decidedly worse than Xbox One X, so Xbox One X is a match for high here. Here then it became a matter of finding the soft shadow quality setting, which changes how the sun and moon shadows are filtered to enable contact hardening. It was a bit hard to say, but Xbox One X did not look like low or off, as that gets rid of contact hardening, but it also did not look like Ultra. So it's somewhere around medium or high, which have basically no difference in performance. But still, shadows in certain scenes like here did not look the same. As I found out, this is because the far shadow setting and the long shadow settings need to be tweaked. For the shadows here to look the same, you have to set the long shadows option to off. In this scene, dropping the far shadow settings is key, where even going to low does not match the same look as Xbox One X. Its shadows are even lower resolution here somehow. Thus, this is the first time where we cannot match a setting on PC as it is seen on Xbox One X. It seems to be doing something lower or doing something entirely different. In terms of grass shadows, the answer is more straightforward. On the high setting, larger stalks of grass produce shadow maps, while on the settings below that of medium and low, they do not. Xbox One X in this scene does not have grass producing shadow maps like this. Rather, it just has screen space shadows, so it is most like medium or low. All in all, going from the Xbox One settings here for shadows and pumping everything up to Ultra with high grass shadows and long shadows enabled sees a performance drop of 7%. Screen space ambient occlusion was thankfully not as arduous to figure out. I knew right away it was not utilizing full screen resolution SSAO as found in the advanced menu, as SSAO in grass flickers from its lower resolution on Xbox One X, where on PC, with that setting set to on, it does not exhibit that effect. And then, with that knowledge, lining up some shots put Xbox One X here at medium, but honestly, Ultra does not look that completely different usually. Here, going from medium to Ultra with full resolution set to on can see a 10% decrease in performance. Moving on, the reflection quality setting controls two things: the quality and resolution of render to texture reflections like those found in Windows, and the quality of screen space reflections. Looking at the render to texture reflections in Windows made this an easy get. Putting Ultra next to Xbox One X, you can see a stark difference in terms of resolution. And that resolution on Xbox One X makes it so all these types of reflections alias rather badly. Doing the lineup, I would put Xbox One here at the low setting, which matches it in terms of resolution and how much it aliases. But when I went over to look at screen space reflections, I found another custom solution here on Xbox One X. See, on Xbox One X, if you look at images after a camera cut, you can see how there is scarcely any reflections. Rather, the reflection stabilizes over time. John found this out in his review of the game over a year ago. And if you look at the size of those resolved pixels in the reflection, you can see how they generally look fatter. As far as I can tell, Xbox One X also resolves its SSR reflections at an internal resolution lower than 4K, whereas on PC, it doesn't seem like you can actually adjust that, even if you set it to low. And interestingly enough, even on low, some render to texture reflections still look better on PC, like here in the shop window. So here, Xbox One X has another custom setting that seems to be lower than even low. Going from optimized reflections at low to reflections at ultra in scenes with SSR sees a serious performance drop of 11%. And in those scenes with RTT reflections, that drop in performance can increase to 17%. Mirror quality affects really only one thing in the game, as I found out, and that is the quality of full body mirror reflections in literal mirrors. But oddly enough, not the shaving mirror outside the camp. Here, reducing this setting reduces the internal resolution of that render to texture reflection. And here I found out that Xbox One X looks like the high setting with no multi-sample anti-aliasing enabled. Water quality was another one of those settings that was not easy to get. First, let's start with water physics quality. Here, dropping that setting down presumably decreases the amount of triangles that make up the mesh on its surface. With greater geometric density, that means it can undulate more and have more visible turbulence. Here, Xbox One X did not look like the ultra and high values of 3 and 4 bars, but it was hard to tell between values that are lower than that. So that setting revealed itself when I was shooting the water with a pistol, with the settings higher than low, producing geometric splashes of increasing quality as the setting is put higher. Xbox One X does not produce any such splash when shooting the surface in my testing. This puts Xbox One X here at the low setting of 1 bar, which does the exact same. Going here from optimized Xbox One X settings to the highest with all bars full sees a massive drop of nearly 32% performance. But the biggest part of that drop occurs when going from high to ultra, which sees 26% of its performance lost with very little visual gain. Now, figuring out water reflection quality had me looking for hours back and forth between images. I knew it would reduce the resolution of off-screen reflections in water, but water surfaces have such unsharp reflections anyway. Then I noticed something odd. Reducing water reflections to low, for some reason, I don't know why, transforms the shape of objects found in the reflections above the water plane. So stuff on the beach, basically. I have no idea why, but that's what happens. Lo and behold, that same geometric deformation is found on Xbox One X, so it's probably on the medium setting here. From there on, figuring out water refraction quality was a matter of seeing how the ripple pattern lined up actually, and that turned out to be high on Xbox One X. But enough of that. Volumetric quality controls oh so many variables, and is one of the most interesting bits when lining up settings with the Xbox One X. When playing the game initially at nearly maxed out settings, in many spots I was kind of floored by how visible the light rays were when shooting through trees and even in cutscenes, where I honestly could not remember volumetrics even being there on Xbox One X. I went back and checked, and they basically are not. The thing is, Xbox One X utilizes a lower quality for its near and far volumetric lighting resolution, which controls the resolution of rendering for the various cascades used in the frustum-aligned volumetric fog grid. When putting that version next to the PC settings, both of those settings look to be somewhere between low and medium, but with it being very hard to tell which is which. But beyond this, interestingly, if you look at the amount of noise generated on movement in these fog volumes, the Xbox One X shows dither and breakup even more than the low setting as I see it. So here this appears to be a custom area where we cannot lower the settings enough to match that look as they appear on Xbox One X. Here, utilizing Xbox One X's shadow settings in combination with low volumetric quality for near and far and going up to ultra sees a 5% drop in performance. But there's more to volumetrics. As a part of them, the advanced setting also controls the resolution and rendering of extremely distant God rays and the resolution of clouds in the sky. It was obvious that these clouds and distant God rays were not going to be native resolution on Xbox One X due to the aliasing that they showcase, so that unlocked ray march resolution option is definitely set to off. But getting the sky to line up for shots between versions and even between settings is just basically not possible. So here, I took the size of the smallest detail visible in the clouds themselves when a camera cut occurs, which should allow it to alias. Medium and low, on the other hand, show similarly large sized artifacts in their cloud formations. You can likewise tell that the setting on Xbox One X is low or medium because small thin clouds on Xbox One X show a lot of aliasing and flickering. Dropping settings on PC increases the amount of aliasing as you go down. To reach anywhere near a similar amount of aliasing and flicker requires the option to be on medium or low, so it could really be one of those two. And I'm not 100% sure, but here I'm going to give Xbox One X the benefit of the doubt and say it's at medium settings. Going from medium to a normal ultra sees 4% drop in performance here. That drop in performance increases to 8% if unlocked ray march resolution is set to on. But darn, those skies do look awesome when they have no aliasing. Particle quality, like water quality, required some inference to figure out what was actually happening. In normal scenes, I could barely see a difference between the settings for particle quality, but by checking out the size of certain particles post-camera cut with the various settings, I could see that Xbox One X is utilizing the medium setting here, which decreases the screen size that particles can inhibit and thus making them cheaper. Particle shading, though, is a complete mystery to me. By toggling it, I really could not induce any difference in those areas where I imagined it might readily show. Like here, how Arthur's shadow applies to the smoke here. I would imagine that the shadow would look different between low and ultra, but it really doesn't. So here I would just imagine that Xbox One X is using the medium setting, mainly because the default ultra settings, without dipping into advanced settings, keep particle shading quality at medium. And given how things have turned out so far for Xbox One X, medium sounds pretty reasonable. Tessellation quality was one of the few features that Rockstar acknowledged as being upgraded over console in its press releases, and that definitely holds true for the final game. Looking at Xbox One X, it is possible to see that the distance at which snow tessellation deformation occurs is actually lower than medium. At the same time though, the quality of that deformation and how rounded it looks is actually a match for high tessellation. The edges produced on medium are noticeably pointier. So, following the theme with shadows and textures, Xbox One X sacrifices detail in the distance to keep the quality close to the camera. Important to note here is that on launch day, tessellation was seemingly broken on PC, with it sometimes looking correct, but oftentimes not actually deforming the snow on the surface as it should. For example, in the initial chapter, I was searching for tracks in the snow, which was nearly impossible to see with the launch day version. But here, I'm happy to report that a patch has been released shortly after launch which fixes that issue, and tessellated snow is now deforming and rendering as it properly should. In terms of anti-aliasing, the optimized Xbox One X settings are pretty simple. Xbox One X's temporal AA resolve looks most similar to high or medium, which basically look identical on PC and perform basically the same. As per usual, on camera cuts you can see that Xbox One X does not use any FXAA or any MSAA, which would otherwise smooth over those edges when TAA is absent. Whew. And now to go on to those last odds and ends settings in the advanced menu, where you can go above PC Ultra with some of them. Geometry view distance and level of detail is one of those few settings where Xbox One X rivals the highest setting on PC, but the setting is also not very ambitious. If you look at the scene here and take a closer look at the portrait on the box in the camp, the distance at which this fully resolves or disappears out of LOD corresponds with the geometry LOD setting. On the lowest setting of 0 bars, the distance to the portrait before it disappears is rather close. At the highest of full 5 bars, that is pushed back by just a few meters. Xbox One X has that same distance as the highest setting here. Grass and tree view distance, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. Here in direct side-by-sides, it's possible to see that optimized Xbox One X settings have 2 bars out of a possible 10 for grass distance. At 3 bars above 2 bars, the amount of grass increases in the distance. Beyond that is found on Xbox One X. But as I see it, the settings for Xbox One X here actually already look pretty good for most views in the game. So pushing it out adds excessive draw distance to the grass to the point where it is impossible to see where the grass stops drawing. It can add though to scenes with extreme view distances. Likewise, increasing that setting to 10 can change the density of local grass in some scenes, like here in this cutscene where Xbox One X has no grass where the highest setting on PC does. The tree view distance setting sees similar compromises, but still looks visually competent. Here the Xbox One X optimized settings show distant tree densities and visuals looking the same as the low setting as found on PC, where medium, high, and ultra above it dramatically increase the distance at which trees become visible and the detail of those trees closer to the camera. So there are of course performance consequences for these differences. Going from a setting of 2 bars, as found on Xbox One X, to a full 10 on PC Ultra for grass view distance drops performance by nearly 14%. The setting for trees though is less dramatic. Going from low tree LOD to ultra tree LOD drops performance by just 2%. Parallax occlusion mapping quality is rather unremarkable as I see it. On Ultra you can see that the setting creates another layer of parallax detail from which shadows can cast. High is missing this. Medium and high look practically the exact same, and low turns off parallax occlusion mapping completely. Xbox One X here is utilizing the medium or high setting as it is missing that extra parallax detail and extra shadows found on Ultra. And by going from medium or high to Ultra, there's a very small, less than 2% performance drop. Decal Quality is one of the options where I could not make up my mind at all of what it is using on Xbox One X. I could not find any performance difference between the various settings, nor could I find a visual difference in the amount of decals that can be drawn or how long it takes for them to disappear, really. So here I would just say put it to medium and forget it. The last setting of them all is extremely situational and controls the quality of fur rendering in the game. Red Dead Redemption 2 utilizes the so-called alpha shell technique, where an alpha textured piece of geometry is wrapped around a model, and by laying that geometry many times over, it creates the illusion of shorter strands of fur or hair. On medium, it looks pretty okay when far away from the camera, as can be seen here in this cutscene. This is the setting that Xbox One X is utilizing when you do the back and forths. But when this technique is closer to the camera, it can break down if the number of alpha textured shells is low, like it is on the medium setting. Hence why the hair on this deer here being skinned so close to the camera looks so strange. It looks like detail is floating off the body, and you can see the ridges and lines from the individual alpha shells. Putting the setting to high above medium makes it so that the illusion of it being hair or fur is maintained, even when it is very close to the camera. I think it looks pretty great actually. And even in shots further away from the camera like the one we saw earlier, extra layers aid in creating the illusion that it is indeed fur. But it has a cost. If that fur is very close to the camera, putting the effect up to high can drop performance by almost 7%. So that is it. every single setting, with nearly all having matchable equivalents on Xbox One X. And going from those initial Ultra settings that I started with to optimized Xbox One X settings can show massive increases in performance. In the benchmark, it is possible to see more than double the performance, putting the game from 30 FPS territory on an RTX 2080 Ti to 60 FPS territory. In game itself, riding around on the horse, you can see an incredible lock for 60 FPS with even some headroom to spare, enough to turn up other key settings like water physics quality to high, anisotropic filtering to 16x, and volumetric quality to medium or high should you so wish. This will of course be different from scene to scene depending upon what is happening and what is taking up the camera view, but is still fascinating. If we take a look at Xbox One X settings, it is preserving a lot of detail close to the camera and making sacrifices for those options that are very expensive, like reflections or volumetric lighting or water detail. It also sacrifices detail into the distance, as you won't see it too often. But if you are like me and want a bit more than those settings, I would also recommend upping water physics to the high setting and putting up anisotropic filtering to 16x. That perspective we have gained here from doing this is so important, as we can now make a more qualified appreciation of the game's level of optimization, which at console settings performs more like I would expect it should on an RTX 2080 Ti. It can have just about 2 times the performance that the Xbox One X can show. But still, the game is imperfect. For one, we cannot actually tweak down the settings to exactly what the Xbox One X has, and I would like to be able to do that. Secondly, some settings are just poor in how they scale. Any of the texture settings below high look downright ugly, and the amount of VRAM scaling enabled by the settings is skewed. You do not get a lot of VRAM back for completely nuking texture quality. Considering how many other PC games manage to allow texture scaling that does not destroy visual quality by having it be more aggressively streamed or utilizing smaller caches, makes me think the way textures are managed in Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC could possibly be better. And lastly, a number of people have reported crashing or stuttering, with my colleague Richard Ledbetter experiencing crashing firsthand, with it seemingly being related to GPUs with less VRAM. Beyond this, I think the game is well optimized on PC when you consider what the settings actually do in comparison to Xbox One X, but that has been communicated rather poorly. The settings menu is godlike for its amount of options, but it does not give you a good understanding in the menu itself of the visual or performance ramifications for the various settings. Other games manage to do that, like Gears of War 5 or any Ubisoft game, so this one should too. I do welcome the fact that we can scale this game so much, and that the lowest settings, basically as Xbox One X looks, still looks really great. High and Ultra will allow this game to scale far into the future. I appreciate what they do. At the same time, they show a conundrum with scaling that can affect certain PC games. Unless new techniques are utilized, like ray tracing, or effects and assets are completely changed, like them remaking Arthur's model, if that doesn't happen, then Ultra settings can only offer incremental upgrades at times. The thing is, to fix small visual artifacts at times requires a doubling or quadrupling of sample counts and resolutions for certain things. So it's pretty easy to see how there's an inverse relationship between returns on performance and visuals at times. But hey, at least we have the game on PC now. Now just to wait for things that honestly should have been there in the day zero version. And until then, I hope you enjoyed this video and can perhaps scale your settings better in the game now that we know how the Xbox One X version has been optimized. If you did enjoy it and found it useful or intriguing, then hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you are already a subscriber, then please hit that little bell in the corner to be informed as soon as Digital Foundry posts a video. If you want to talk to me about this game or anything else, write a comment below or follow me and Digital Foundry on Twitter. And as always, this is Alex, bidding you farewell und auf Wiedersehen.
Would you just look around you? This world has its consolations.